if you're on the market and looking for a new job, especially with the FANG or any other high-performing company, you should know there's a huge trend going on in the labor market. And I wanted to give a little bit of context from someone doing this for over 7 years. I've been here when the interest rates were low, post-pandemic, when everyone was hiring, there was a hiring boom, and basically candidates were happy. Now, what happens today is that interest rates are high, so the labor market, especially for high-paying jobs, is very tight. Now, with the recent development with the war in Iran, there's also some added risk for interest rates in the form of inflation. So oil prices spiked by around 15% by now, which almost always translates to higher prices for gas at the pump, at least in the US, which basically will translate in inflation for the average consumer, headline inflation, so to speak, which if that headline inflation sticks for longer than a few weeks or months, that will translate into core inflation, which is the Fed's favorite measurement when tracking these things. So long story short, if inflation trends higher, it's very unlikely for the Fed to bring interest rates down. Okay, so what this means for the job market is that you should expect a tight job market for longer. Right now, what does this mean for your application for jobs with FANGs? Because truth be said, there are still jobs. There's people landing jobs with these FANG companies. It still happens, so to speak. But what's different if you are approaching such a career? There's 3 things I like to highlight here. First is that you should expect longer hiring cycles, okay, like double than what you would expect normally, right? So if you are invited for a phone screening round with a FANG company, usually it takes around 3 months to get a job. Nowadays, it might take as long as 6 months because of the current environment, right? The second thing you should keep in mind is the way people get jobs in FANG companies, and I know this because I do this with my clients, is with backup plans. So basically, simplest example is I had people who were impacted by layoffs, right? High-performing individuals, and their reflex was not to look for a job with a FANG automatically. They were looking for a safer approach, still with some reputable companies, perfectly fine companies, but not with FANGs. Once they secured those job offers, or they were in a position where they were confident they would pass their final interview rounds, they also applied and took FANG opportunities more seriously. And basically, because of that boost, that hey, you have a solid backup behind, that enabled them to take risk interviewing with FANGs, which ultimately turned to be successful, right? So plan for backup. At first, this is what I would recommend. And last but not least, also in my experience, the best possible planning that you can take with these moves with these career moves, so to speak, is to plan ahead. How long do you expect for you until you land your dream job, so to speak? And you might say, hey, it's going to take me around 3 months or 6 months. Let's say 6 months would be more realistic. Now, what I would recommend you here would be to multiply those 6 months by a factor 3 or 4 or even 5 to plan for at least, 2 years in order to achieve your goals. Because what happens is that many candidates interpret this expectations that things will happen too quickly, and the more time passes, it will not be to your advantage. So unless you have again some little bit of backup, and you know how to expect, how to look at these things in terms of years rather than months, this is how you would optimize also your chances to be successful in your career transition. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.